Hello, this is Ace McManamy,
And I'm George Wade Mohammed.
and this is going to be our first episode of George and I's series on our Turkey Talks. That's what we're calling it. And this is kind of our explanation for and our findings through research and our own findings in the field for our Senior Distinction Project, which is a turkey hunting and / turkey habitat management project, and everything that we've learned.
Yeah, so I guess we'll kind of dive right into why we chose this project and why we've thought that this would be a good thing for Woodbury to keep carrying on after we graduate. You want to open the stage or?
Yeah, so I think Senior Distinction. Our listeners, I guess, are all going to be Woodbury students, so y'all know what it is. But just a little run through. It's a program in the last marking period of your senior year where you get to pick a project, any kind that you want, and you get through an approval process. And I remember two seniors last year, Tyler Mills and Clark Warren. They actually did a fly fishing Senior Distinction, and it's somewhat similar to this in that, it wasn't hunting, of course, but they went down the Rapidan River every day, went fishing, but there was a big science component to this and a how-to guide, what fly to use, because they used nets to pick up the insects out of the bottom of the river. Big science component there. And then I think that kind of inspired me. I think, George, you would agree too.
Yeah,
I mean, I took forestry this year with Mr. Afrani. And Mr. Afrani, this actually is last year, which is unfortunate, but he really inspired me to want to go out into the field during my last couple weeks of school and spend my time out in nature, because we did a lot of timber quality. We'd go out every day in his class. We'd label trees. We got to the point by the end of the year where we knew all the native species on campus just by looking at their leaf patterns or maybe their bark, as well as we did a big invasive species project, which was very interesting to me, because I guess I kind of always thought of invasive species as an animal or an insect, but really a almost maybe even a bigger problem in a lot of scenarios is a invasive plant species, such as like princess tree. We have a lot of this English ivy that George and I are actually that's a big part of our project.
It is.
Yeah, George.
So yeah, Senior Distinction is really just something that helps you take full advantage of the campus. I mean, we're blessed to have so much land and so many resources around that we just decided we thought that this might be the best thing for us to do in the last few weeks of school. And like he was saying, Clark and Tyler, they kind of inspired us, because I mean, they were having fun and they were doing things that they love to do, which is why Ace and I chose this. I mean, we're both very big hunters. We're both from the South, Georgia and Mississippi. We do a lot of hunting, and turkey hunting was just not one of the big things that we hunt, and we thought it was pretty interesting, and we found it very interesting to us that that it was something that we wanted to do and kind of learn more about, so we can keep doing it in our years coming. But yeah, that's really why we chose the project.
Yeah, I mean, George and I kind of went into this very little experience.
Not knowing a lot at all.
Knowing a lot at all, but that's kind of the greatest thing about Senior Distinction, is that it gives you the time to do a lot of research. And I can't even imagine trying to do this project 20 years ago without YouTube, just using the internet to Google whatever you want at any time. Greatest thing is, after watching 5 YouTube episodes, you kind of have a beginner's knowledge of where and what to do.
I would say I would not know how to do a mouth call or even a box call if it wasn't for YouTube. I mean, just the videos, they break it down so easy that you can do it right there within 5 minutes.
It's almost like an extension of our Zoom classes in a sense. all of our Zoom classes through COVID, we're not there, but you still kind of feel like you get some hands-on learning in some instances, and a lot of these YouTube channels with these guys who they kind of want to teach the new generation of hunters. They're doing a great job because they're really good at passing on their knowledge in a pretty in a form that is easy to understand, which can be hard to do at times. But that's kind of what we're also trying to hope. George and I are trying to hope here is to create these podcasts as well, alongside our little 23-minute movie that we made, so that you listening, if you're in the Rod and Gun Club, or if you're not and you want to join in years to come, to be a part of it and to learn more not only about turkeys, but turkeys on our campus, that the population is, right now, George and I actually went out very early in the morning, many afternoons, lots of calling, and we did not see a single turkey. And through our research, this really has to do with a lack of good habitat.
Yeah, going back in what Asa was saying, I mean, we spent countless hours in the field, in the woods. I mean, I remember one morning, it was not a very good morning. It was 30 degrees outside. We were still trying our best. We were moving from place to place, calling, using the owl call, crow call, just not having very much luck. But, we stuck in there. And after that, we kind of realized that Woodbury does need habitat restoration more than anything. If we could do it, the best thing we could, if we could, we would do a controlled burn, which would probably be the best thing for us. But unfortunately, with this campus, we have too many buildings around, and the highway is right next to where we've been hunting. So we can't really do that. And also the cost of having somebody come in and do that, because unfortunately a few high school boys can't burn an entire forest. But yeah, all these invasive species have kind of taken over the forest, and it's so thick and that you really no animal can move around through all that. So
through all of that overgrowth.
Yeah.
The problem isn't only the invasive species. The problem is that there's been a lack of management. And I think it's pretty obvious, George, that there's been some brush hogging or bushwhacking, whatever you want to call it, through these forests. And a lot of times that can actually just make it a bigger pain in the future. Because you're going to get a lot of these, a lot of regrowth that is kind of hard to manage. It's going to be really thick. It's going to be really hard for not only turkeys to move through, but like George was saying, not a lot of creatures who are sight-oriented in staying away from predators or finding prey are going to want to go through those parts of the woods.
Yeah, and it's a great place for any animal just to kind of roost or lay down in and have that area because of how tight it is and how much cover they have. But when it comes to actually hunting in the woods, you're not going to see a turkey or a deer just kind of walking around just because of how thick it is. But that's not to say our forest is a bad habitat, because we have oaks, we have all kinds of trees that are dropping
lots of
nuts.
hickory. Yeah.
There's plenty of food, there's plenty of cover and everything. It's just some of these invasive species have taken over so much, and as well as people that have come in there, cut trees down, and they've just left the trees, and that kind of just all these.
There's a lot of saplings that have just been left in areas that when it might be a game trail for a turkey or a deer or a fox, a raccoon. It might be instead of a game trail, it ends up being a blockade of sorts.
Like you see in the video, one spot where we were talking, you can see how somebody cut the tree down and it was just right there, but that tree had been there for so long that all the invasive species have just grown over top, and it's almost made like a little hut around it.
Yeah. That's definitely a big issue, and I guess this is kind of George and I saying that it's not impossible to reverse this, but it will take time. With a controlled burn, with a large group of professionals, you could easily do this in one summer, in a couple outings, in a couple outings. But we don't have that luxury, so what it's going to take is time time and a lot of hard work. Now, our proposed plan is to make it to where you guys listening to this can actually get service hours for this, and I think there's no better way to gain a service hour than actually giving back to your campus. And that would be through the Rod and Gun Club going out on a weekend in the fall, maybe a couple weekends in the fall, or in the spring. Really does not matter when. Going out there and clearing out some of these species, getting rid of some of this overgrowth, and just bettering the habitat in general. Now, George, kind of to pivot here, I actually kind of want to talk about how some of like our hunting tactics, because we kind of brushed over it in the video, but here we've got a lot of time to talk about it. So, kind of just get us started on some of our hunting tactics.
Yeah. So normally, I'll start from the first thing. I mean, we'd wake up about 4:30. We'd meet at the post office at 5 and walk down. We had a significant walk, so we try to leave pretty early. Normally, we'd right at daybreak. We would start using the owl call, the box call, just because it was a little bit louder. You can kind of reach out there. We'd just listen for a gobble, maybe even a purr or whatever, just to see if we could find a turkey or hear one, just so we can know what location it was in. We would normally do this for about, I'd say about an hour, just kind of moving spot to spot, just seeing if we could hear something. And after that, normally we would sit down in a spot where, after doing our research, we thought it would be a good area of where a turkey might roost, or where a turkey was coming off the roost. We kind of sit there, listen, using mouth call, box call, etc., just trying to hear a turkey, really. Usually we'd put a decoy out, depending where we were. We'd put it about 10 yards in front of us since we were using a bow. Now, if we had a gun, you can really reach out from anywhere from 30 to 60 yards, but with a bow, you're trying to get something a little bit closer. Normally, we just sit with our backs against a tree, and just kind of post up, and that would be really what we do for a little while, and then kind of move again. One morning we went out, and we thought it was a pretty good area, so we didn't really move that much, but we set up. We had a little field in front of us, and we set the decoys out, and we had a little makeshift blind that we built out of sticks and tree branches and everything. Kind of sat there for a while, and then unfortunately we didn't have very much luck hearing anything, so we moved around. But I mean, normally we'd just kind of walk around, listening, sit down for a little bit, move again. Just going to different areas, trying different places. But yeah, that's about it.
Yeah, and like I guess I'm gonna talk about even before we went hunting. George and I spent about 2-3 days. I think it was 2 or 3 days, actually scouting. And what that entailed was we'd wake up at the same time around 4:30, meet at 5 at the post office. It ends up being about a 30-minute walk, 30 minutes from post office to set up.
Yeah.
Because George and I, y'all obviously know what we're talking about. You'll walk down that main road from the gatehouse. You can either walk down that, and there's that forest on the right, which we really do not recommend hunting in. We don't think it's a big enough area, and there's also some dogs.
Yeah, we ran into a little trouble there.
Some very
aggressive dogs.
Aggressive, annoying dogs down there. But you can go down there, and you can take a left. You have to go walk a little bit past the guardhouse, actually almost near the brick wall, and you take that left, and there's that long trail. And then we hunted all along those woods at different points, but then we kept on going to where it's about at a Highway 15, and you take a left. And then you're almost at the point where Highway 15 turns to 283 next to that big open field. And we hunted all along there, but we did a lot of scouting through there. I'd say the scouting started in the fall in my forestry class. George and his environmental. But there are, you would think that it'd just be one forest and the same, but it's actually not, because when you're walking down that path on your right hand side, There's actually a substantial pine forest, shortleaf pine, and George and I actually believe that that might be the best habitat on campus for these turkeys, because they're pretty evenly spaced and there's a lot of room for these turkeys to roam around in. They love the shortleaf pine forests.
And it's definitely one of the most open areas that we have in the forest. It's not so grown off and everything.
Yeah, and then so on the left side you kind of have the forest you kind of see all around campus, which is a little thick. Could definitely use some work. But if you keep on going, then you start hitting some fields. You'll get your first field on the left-hand side, which actually has a really big tree out in the open, where George and I filmed our video. If you want to watch that, we'd love you to, and I think it's pretty informative. But so that's kind of where the fields start. And a lot of Woodbury's acreage is used up by these fields, whether it be corn or sunflower, which is where the dove fields are. The dove fields are sunflower. And you keep walking, and then you kind of hit this first opening. Once you take a left on that path, your first, I guess, substantial left, there's going to be this big opening and these two big beech trees, one of which is kind of covered in English ivy, one of which is not. But George and I believe that field is actually going to be, we believe that turkeys actually should be there. Yeah. That'd actually be good habitat because it's kind of at the crest of this valley, the top of the hill, I guess, going down to a valley where there's a bunch of knee-high, not even knee-high at times, grass. There's definitely a lot of food in there for these turkeys, whether it be insects or some acorns, whatever it may be. And we actually posted up there that one of those beech trees right there. And we kept on walking along, and then George and I actually hunted or called in a couple more spots near these open fields. And once you get down there, you'll have a much better picture and understand kind of what we're talking about. But we kind of hunted in the back corner of these fields, and once you get down there, you'll understand. And George and I also have a pretty detailed map of it. But we hunted back in there, called, and George was really interesting to me when we were calling was the amount of feedback we'd get from other creatures. We got a lot from the crows, of course. The crows were constantly calling back, which I guess is a good sign that, there is a lot of other wildlife.
Yeah.
I mean, crows, the owl, having an owl call back is pretty interesting. Yeah. That's pretty cool. It's a cool experience. But we heard, we never saw an owl, although we heard them. But we saw a geese.
We saw some deer.
We saw a lot of deer.
Saw a lot of deer, some foxes.
Saw a mouse.
A mouse. So the habitat, it has we have animals in this forest. It's just sometimes complicated to find them.
Yeah. I think Woodbury's camp is actually pretty interesting because the incorporation of a lot of this wild, I guess, kind of forest with this farmland seemingly right next to each other, Yeah. But that's actually a good thing from some things that we've read, because these farms these fields can actually serve as a food source for these turkeys.
I can imagine whenever those crops start growing here in a few weeks that the turkeys will probably get off the roost and go to those fields just where they can have something. Because I think they're planting corn in one of those fields.
They are, and a couple of them. Yeah.
Just a little bit of cracked corn might get them going. That
definitely will get them going.
Yeah, that'll definitely get them going. But going back to the things we did when we were hunting and scouting, the first time I ever really killed a turkey back in Greenwood was doing the same thing. I was with another man named Rod Veazey, and we kind of just went around to different places calling and listening, and sure enough, we heard some turkeys, and we kept calling, and then they saw the decoy that we had about 30 yards in front of us, and all those turkeys just once they saw that decoy and that fan, they all just, it was a group of them, probably 10, and they all started running towards that decoy. And he just said, pick the first one that has a beard out and shoot, and I shot it. So that's what kind of we were aiming for. If we could hear something, maybe we could get it come a little closer. And once it saw that hen decoy or that gobbler decoy with that fan that we had on ours, they would start coming towards it just because of the competition. And because two gobblers, if they're not in the same group, normally whenever they see each other, they're gonna fight. So
Brawl's about to break out.
Yeah, the brawl is about to break out pretty much. And
I think it's important to notice, George, like we were pretty well equipped.
oh yeah,
for going out there. We got this in the video, but we had good camouflage. I had a leaf suit. We had the right calls.
face mask and all that.
We were using them in the right situations.
Yeah.
But I guess part of it, George, is we haven't even brought up yet is this the weather that we faced.
Yeah, definitely.
We're going to cover a little bit now, but we're also going to cover later when we kind of go over, I guess the biology of turkeys, a little bit of the science behind them. But George, speak on the weather that we had to deal with.
This Virginia weather is something that I've never experienced before. What is it? May 13th. And I guess it was a week ago, so May 6th, we went out one morning, it
30
was
degrees.
30 degrees outside. Fog was staying down until 9 o'clock or 8:30 almost. And it's just not ideal weathers for turkey hunting at all. We went out multiple times in the morning where we would have fog just sit on top of us and sit on those fields and in those woods, and they just wouldn't move. And then other mornings we'd go out, it'd be like 85 the day before. We go out that morning and it's 34 degrees outside. It's just not something that a turkey really is looking for, honestly. They're not planning on getting out of the tree when the fog's that low or if it's that cold. Asa and I didn't even want to go out those mornings when it was 30 degrees outside. We were equipped with all the right gear, but
Well, I don't know for the turkey. We kind of had our springtime camo.
yeah, well, we did expect. Considering we're about to be out of school for summer, we didn't expect this weather to be like it was. So normally I was just wearing some basic camo pants, a little fleece type jacket, a face mask, and some thin gloves. And I was shivering. I was freezing. My feet, I almost felt like I couldn't feel my feet.
That was the biggest problem there. I guess y'all will find out if you ever want to go out calling in the morning is the dew, dew in some of these fields. Because George and I, we wouldn't only walk down the main road. We'd another way you can go is you can cut across a golf course, and you're kind of going up
Towards the lake.
Yeah, towards the lake. You're crossing hole 4, and you end up going past hole 8, and you kind of cross that black fence that leads to Lake Robertson. And we'd go through there, and then we kind of wrap around the lake, and then follow. You'll see this big telephone line because they kind of have it clear cut through there, but it passes a couple little streams, I guess, or runoffs, and there's actually a lot of fields right there, which would be a good food source for these turkeys, but not the most fun if it's 30 degrees out in the morning to go through that dew.
Yeah, I'd say that was one of the major problems was just walking down in the mornings. We had boots on, but when you're walking through some of that it's tall enough grass where it's getting up to your thighs just about, and your legs are soaking wet, and then you sit down and it's 30 degrees outside, and it's just like, it feels like you're freezing. It was just like that morning we went goose hunting and it was snowing outside. It almost felt like that. I almost felt like it was like
Yeah, George
so
and I,
cold.
We went hunting one morning this winter with a couple of our guys goose hunting, and it was top 5 coldest moments of my entire life.
Yeah. We had Nick Hawkins. Shout out to Nick Hawkins.
Shout out Nick Hawkins.
For keeping us entertained. But Yeah, the weather has not been very ideal. Like, I mean, today, as we're making this podcast, I mean, it's cloudy, it's rainy. We had multiple days like that where
We've only had about 3 or 4 days of actually nice sunny weather.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely have been hunting in some weather that has not been very
less
ideal.
than ideal conditions.
Yeah.
You know, I guess that's kind of what pushed us, George, to move over to the habitat conservation part a little bit earlier than we originally intended. George and I intended to go hunting every day for 2 weeks, and we stopped after a week and a half after not hearing a single gobble, any signs of turkey. You know, we were even looking for tracks.
Yeah.
We'd go out after a rain, just praying to see some of those turkey tracks on some of that clay dirt. We did see a lot of deer tracks and some coyote tracks.
Just not.
Just no turkey.
I'd say though we went in pretty confident about this or seeing turkeys because I mean, Mr. Afrani, our wonderful faculty advisor, apparently went down 2 days before we started the project and saw turkeys. So we went in pretty confident. I mean, first day we thought, okay, we're probably about to go hear a turkey right off the bat, and so we, the first day we didn't hear a turkey. We weren't too upset about it, and then next day wasn't too bad, and then day after day after day not hearing them, we were like, maybe we should just change what we're doing right now and just focus on the habitat part and making this podcast to help the future generations keep it going and help the habitat. So that's I'd say that's.
I think we're trying to just kind of keep turkeys in the conversation at Woodbury.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, George, before this project, I hadn't even heard anyone talk about turkey hunting or turkey habitat restoration. You hear all about the goose hunts and what can we do to help the goose population here? What can we do to make goose hunting better?
I the only story I've ever heard really about turkey hunting at Woodbury was from alum Marsh Willis, Chef Willis's older brother. Whenever him and Davis Willis were here, the twins, they killed a turkey, and they were also down there in the same spot. And I think that was really the last time I've ever heard.
I mean, how many years? What were they? Class of 15?
Yeah, I think class of 15 or 16.
Yeah, and since then I have not heard. I mean, on our time on campus, no one's gone turkey hunting. I know that for a fact. And certainly, there's been no turkey habitat restoration project.
Well, I'm glad y'all, for all that are tuning in, I'm glad y'all are here to listen, and we'll be back tomorrow.
Yeah, George and I are we're gonna post Raymond for like a 5-part podcast series, maybe more, and maybe less. We may actually have some extended ones. We don't know yet.
Tomorrow.
Kind of see how that goes, but we're going to dive into the kind of history of turkey hunting, especially in Virginia, and just kind of America in general. And that's going to tie into, that's actually going to tie into some how the turkey population has at one point it was very big, and then for a period of time they got overhunted, and now the turkeys are back in just about then they're actually in 50 states, every state in America. And then we're going to go into the science of turkeys, which is pretty interesting. George and I have actually, Twitter's actually been a big help. There's actually this one, there's some people on Twitter that have kind of done a deep dive into the science behind turkeys. Then we're going to kind of talk about habitat restoration at Woodbury and how that can be improved. And we might even do a kind of a hunting tactic podcast, just so we can kind of put all the information that we've gathered and then give it to y'all, so y'all don't have to go and do the research, because we're hoping that what this ends up being is that in 4 or 5 years, we don't know how long it'll take, maybe kids can go next year and see a turkey. That would be absolutely wonderful. But so that y'all can go out to areas that we've scouted and we've done all the grunt work for, and y'all can go out and enjoy your time turkey hunting and restoring the habitat and keeping that conversation going. Yeah. Well, we just thank you we just thank you for listening in to our first podcast, the first one of the series, and I hope you enjoy the rest.